These are the learning objectives for this module titled Managed and Right-Size RBAC Role Assignments for Least Privilege. Here you will learn how to implement least privilege access governance across Azure and Microsoft Entra ID, assign built-in roles at appropriate scope, create custom roles for Azure resources and Microsoft Entra directory operations. Then we'll identify and remediate overprivileged access using Microsoft Entra Access Reviews and Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management, CSPM, and Identity Insights. Those are the operations and tasks that we'll cover next in this demo. We will start, as usual, at the portal.azure.microsoft.com, the Azure portal. But again, as I was just saying, so this is the module we're going to cover. We are still this is the whole class, all the courses. So there's a lot of them, and so we are still at course number 3, and for security governance and regulatory compliance. So within this course, there are several modules. We have already covered all this. And again, so we are here. Just wanted to set the stage. And as the first objective said, we are going to assign built-in Azure roles at the appropriate scope using least privilege access. That's the first thing we're going to do. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, let's say that I want to actually, even before we get into that, let me explain this for those who may need a review. If you are familiar with this, then you can just skip this section of the video. But anyway, so when we are talking about Azure scopes, we're talking about this. At the root of everything is a management group. And again, you can have more than one. But when you create a tenant account in Microsoft, you get this management group. And you need to have at least one subscription. And again, you can have more subscriptions. So subscriptions are in many ways boundaries, and they are billing boundaries. So you can have a subscription for production, and you can have a subscription for testing and development, for example. And then those have different cost budgets, and they're different security boundaries. But we're not going to get into that right now. And then within those subscriptions, you have resource groups. Everything that you create in Azure, you would need to create a resource group. And so again, you have, production resource group, you have networking, storage, whatever. There's so many ways of doing this, or by region, etc. And then within those resource groups, then you have resources, a VM, an SQL database, an Azure function, etc. So that's what, when we talk about a scope, that's what we are talking about. So let's say that we can search for subscriptions here, but I already have the subscription that I want to work with. And so this is the subscription. If I click on this, another window will pop up. And if I click on access control, IAM, Identity and Access Control Management. So if I click on this, then I get to this access control, and these are the access that I have and all that stuff. So Here you have three tabs, four rather. Check access, if you want to check access and review, for example, the level of access of a specific user group or service principal, you can do that here. And if you want to look at role assignments, you can look at that over here. And you see the different roles, whether these are, some the roles assignments that could be permanent or eligible. We have already, there's a whole video number one about um, the PIM, privilege identity management, which talks about these. But anyway, we are talking about Azure, not Entra in this case. And so here we have the roles that we are talking about. These are Azure roles, not to be confused with Entra roles, which we have already discussed, and we will continue to discuss. And then we have deny assignments in case you have any. But so here we are. These are the roles, and three of the main roles in Azure are the owner, which grants full um, access to everything. You get the contributor role that grant full access to manage all resources, but does not allow you to assign roles. And then you have the reader, as the name implies, you can read stuff, but you cannot change anything. And so if you actually want to see a description of what the role does, um, you know, rather if you want to see all the permissions, this is in JSON format, and here it's everything that it does, and then here are the assignments and all that stuff. So actually not a description, but basically details about uh, what the role does. All right. I'm looking at all the roles. You can also look at job function roles, the specific job function roles, and obviously the privilege administrator roles. So these are roles that you may want to use with PIM, um, and which again we have already talked about that. But in the context of Entra, we have talked about PIM, but you can also use PIM with Azure RBAC roles as well. So let's go back into this, this function, but rather all. So let's say that we need to give someone, let's take a look at VM roles or VM related roles, for example. Um, Here we have the VM restore operator. So if you want someone to be able to have that role without being an owner, this is what least privilege is about. It's so you can create and delete resources using the VM restore, for example. And let's say that someone works with the disaster recovery and restore. So that's one of the roles that they want to do. So you can uh, click on this, and just to, if you want to look at that. But anyway, so if you want to add an assignment, then you click on add role assignment, and so when this opens up, here you choose the so again, you could look at job functions, so you could look at privilege management, depending on what it is that you want to do. So let's say that you want to let user manage user access to Azure resources. Well, you could use this group over here. Click on next, and then here you would select the members. Who do you want? What are the users that you want to have this role? And So let's say that I want to select a couple of users over here. Just hit the control key and choose that. So the user, it's going to be assigned to those members. You can uh, put a description there if you want. It's good to have description just in case someone wants to know why you did this. Click on next, and what do you want the what user can do basically. So allow users to only assign selected roles to selected principals, few privilege, or allow users to assign all roles except privileged administrators, for example, and then it would exclude these roles over here if that's what you want to do. And if you click next, this is what because in this environment we have PIM enabled privileged access management. This is what I was talking about before. So the recommended is that they are eligible. So basically means that member must activate to use this role. So the role will be deactivated, but then when a user needs to use it, they can activate it. Now, if you want to be active, you can choose to be active in a permanent basis or time bound. So let's say that um, you want to just give these people for 15 days to be active, and so they don't have to bother with that. Then you can do that as well. There are use cases for each of this. Now, again, the recommended is this. Anyway, so click on next, and then you just review and assign, and that'll do that. So that's what the role assignment is about. So again, we're not going to go through that here in the Azure, but just to um, actually, if we go to the Entra, because we have this enabled for Entra, so that you see how this works. And we went through this before in a previous video. But if you go to Entra and then you go to ID governance, and then you click on privilege identity management. So let's say that I'm an admin. I want to see what kind of roles assignment I have. So I would come here and then I would go to look at my roles. And here you'll see uh, eligible assignments or active assignments. So in this case, my assignments are active. They're, so I'm a global administrator all the time. In a production environment, this is not recommended. This is a test environment, so it's not a big deal. But normally, in a production environment, your role would be eligible, and then so you would click on activate, and then at that point, then the role will be activated, and this is configurable to, let's say, how long you want the role to be active. So you may want to activate this for 8 hours, depending. So the person does a job, even 2 and 1 hour, depending on a lot of company do 2 hours, because most of the time, whatever you need to do, you can do it within that window. But if you working with a lot of admin tasks and maybe you require more, then all of that is configurable. So anyway, so that's what this is all about. But this is Entra, and we were, so you could do the same thing with Microsoft RBAC, with our RBAC roles, but in this case we did it with Entra. Or in other words, Entra is the one that's enabled there, and we're not going to be changing this thing for now, but you get the point. So this is where you need to come. And that's basically the built-in roles that we were talking about. Now, in the same spat, so if we're here, so we're still on the subscription, and we're looking at the access control and IAM, you can also click on add a custom role. So Microsoft has hundreds of built-in roles that would probably be enough for most environments, but there may be a case in which there is, there are some requirements that none of those built-in roles can um, will work. And then what you do in this case, you can create your own role, right? When you create a custom role, you need to put a name, and you can start with a baseline permission. For example, you can clone an existing role, and then um, you can modify whatever you want. So if you click on this, and let's say that, I don't know, whatever the role may be, that I want to change this contributor role a little bit. Not sure why you may want to do that, but again, if there are some requirements and you want to do that, you can do that. And then when you click on next, here are all the permissions that the role has, and then you can either add and remove. So, but first you clone it, and then once you clone it, then you can go ahead and do stuff. So you can do that with any role. And so if I go back to the basics, you can start from scratch, as I said, or you can start from a JSON file. So if you're familiar with JSON, you can click on it, type in your JSON file, and you can do that as well. So that's basically what the role creation it's about. So if you click from scratch, then again, this is going to be empty, and then you can add permissions to this role depending on what is it that that you want to add to. And then there's a lot of stuff that you can choose and do over here. Okay, and again, so um, those are the general steps how you would click on next, boom, done. And then once you have this role, you can play with it, modify, and if you wanted to. So, um, is this very common? I would say no. In my own experience, I don't remember that in my environment I ever needed to create a custom role. But again, there are very large, complex companies that have, a lot of, you know, many groups, granular groups, and there are some requirements. So there are cases for this, but I don't believe that this is very common. If someone watching that has a different opinion, that I would love to hear that. But anyway, so that's how you would create a custom group. And as a matter of fact, if we um, let's see, I don't believe, I think that there are some built-in roles over here, but these are the types of roles. And if we click on custom roles, let's see here. I don't see any, at least here. So I don't see any custom role that has been created in this tenant. Okay. The next objective, or one of the objectives that we are working on over here, is evaluating and remediating overprivileged access. Assigning roles correctly, it's only half of the RBAC governance task. The harder problem is finding and fixing the overprivileged assignments that already exist. And when we started, so the conduct security team discovered that 37 owner assignments at the subscription scope, with 12 of those accounts dormant for 90 days. And here you can uh, learn how to identify privileged role assignments and remediate them using Defender for Cloud CSPM SIEM capability. So we're gonna go back to home, and then we're gonna look for, again, you could search for this, but we're gonna click on the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and to take a look at that. So now, why does the overprivileged account, well, persist? So, role assignments are rarely revoked once granted, and I know this from experience. When someone's job changes, their all access usually stays. A developer who briefly needed honor to, let's say, set up an environment, still has it, has access to that 6 months later, and even though they move to a completely different project, right? So over time, identities accumulate permissions rather than shed them. And this accumulation creates two categories of overprivilege in the Contoso state: a standing privilege at executive scope and dormant assignments. A standing privilege at executive scope means that someone has honor at the subscription level when they need at a contributor at a resource group scope. And dormant assignments are role assignments for accounts that didn't use Azure in 90 or more days. Former employees, contractors, uh, or service accounts that are no longer in use. Dormant assignments are especially risky. A credential for an account with owner access that um, it's unused in 90 days is a high value target for attackers. The dormancy means that the account likely not monitor, but the permissions remain fully active. And this is why eligible, the roles are so important, because if those accounts are compromised, again, the account is not active. It needs to be activated, and the you know cyber criminal won't be able to do that. So the attacker inherits all the privilege that the legitimate user never even used. So if it's PIM enabled, then there's nothing to worry about. And so Defender for Cloud CSPM, or SIEM for Identity Insights. So that's what we're going to look here. CSPM includes Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, or CIEM, CIEM capabilities that surface identity related risk as security recommendations. So, with the Defender CSPM plan enabled, Defender for Cloud analyzes actual usage patterns and surface identities that have permissions that they don't use. So, what that means is that you need to have CSPM enabled. And as we've seen in previous videos, so if you come to the Defender for Cloud and go to um, environment, and then you choose either the management group or the subscription. So this is what I'm talking about. You have the foundational CSPM, which is free and it's enabled by default. And then you have Defender CSPM, which is not free and it's not enabled by default. It's on my tenant, but this is not enabled by default. And again, you need to have the right licenses in order to do that. But if you don't have the right license, you can start a trial. But the point is that in order to uncover this over provision, then you need that. And once you enable this, so then when you go to the so if we go back and then we go to recommendations, then those recommendations will surface over here. Okay. And so one that common that you may see over here is the remove unused role assignments for owners, for example. So if we um, so are here on the recommendations, we can search for this recommendations, and again, there's nothing here, but so this is the remove unused role assignments, for example. So that would surface over here if that was the case. That recommendation lists specific accounts that don't use their owner permissions in the evaluation window, unlike simple role assignments audits that only show who has what role. SIEM recommendations correlate the assignments with actual authentication and operations data. An account might have owner assigned, but if they never perform any owner specific action, then SIEM flags it for review. So really, um, really cool feature over there. Defender CSPM also detects dormant identities, as we discussed previously, both user accounts and service principals with role assignments, but no authentication activity in the past 90 days. Additionally, it identifies guest accounts with elevated access, surfacing external user accounts holding contributor or higher at a subscription scope. Um, and so if you are here, you can look for identity. Another um, thing that you could look for over here is the over provision. And if you have any over provision account, it will surface over here. The fact that nothing is coming in recommendation is because we don't have that. It's important to emphasize that Defender CSPM's SIEM recommendations require the Defender CSPM plan, as I showed before. Okay. Another feature that we can use here is the Azure Advisor. Azure Advisor provides complementary identity insights in the security category, while Defender CSPM analyzes usage patterns. Advisor flags structural risks based on assignment, account, and account status. So the Azure subscription shouldn't contain multiple owners. Recommendation, that's a recommendation. Um, Flag the subscription with more than 3 owner assignments. So this threshold acknowledges that some subscriptions, you know, um, legitimately need multiple owners for continuity, but more than 3 suggests loose access control. That's one of them. And there are more. But so if we come here and we look at there are 29 security recommendations. You can click on that, but this is what I'm talking about, right? So Windows virtual machine should enable Azure disk encryption, privilege, roles should not have permanent access at the subscription level again. So again, really, really useful to come to the security advisor here. There's all the things. Obviously, you could use the advisor for cost, for reliability, So the main, uh, I would say, components of this advisor are cost, security, reliability, and operational excellence. But in this case, because this is a security minded certification, at least for this portion of the certification exam, the um, the security components is the one that we are looking at. The last component that we are going to look over here is access reviews. And for that, we're going to go into Microsoft Entra. So let's go to the home screen. You're going to go at entra.microsoft.com. And we are going to go into ID and governance. And then from there, we're going to go into access reviews. And and this is where you would do that. So from this page, you can click on New Access Review, depending on what is it that you want to work with. But let's just look at the review access to a resource type, for example. Click on Select. And then here you can choose whether it's an applications, teams and groups. So let's click on teams and groups. And let's say that we want to select a specific group that we want uh, to monitor, whatever, right? Here you can, the scope is either guest users or all users. So let's say that we were working in a project and we had external partners, so we invited guests, but that project has been completed. If you don't do this, and if it was a small project and there was one or two users, you could have removed that manually, no problem, right? But um, sometimes you're working with a lot of guests, and if you don't do this, it's easy to forget. So inactive users. So let's look into inactive users, and they inactive. I think I can go up to. So let's go up to 90, and actually, if maybe 90 is too much, let's do the default of 30. Click next, and so you probably want to go to the group owners, whoever was in charge of that project, right? And you can select fallback reviewers if you want to. Specify resources of review. So duration is 3 days. The reviewed occurrence, this is going to be quarterly, just to make sure that we keep our environment clean. And you want this to end never, or you want to specify specific, whatever the case may be. If you click on the settings, then auto apply results to the resource. And then here you choose what kind of change you want uh, to do. Want to remove access, approve access, or take recommendations, whatever the recommendations are. So let's say we can do remove access, and so no signing in 30 days, used to group affiliation. And what that means is that if enabled, system recommends reviewers to deny users who have low affiliation with other users within the group. Note that you should have manager attribute for this decision to work. Some advanced settings, there may be a justification it's required for this. You want to send email notifications as well. So I should send emails to reviewers when an access review starts, and to the review owner when a review completes. And then reminders, if enabled, Azure will send email for in progress and all that stuff. And again, the um, the additional content for reviewer if you want to put that over there. Okay. You click on next, review and create, and then that will create that access review. So that's what, and again, so you can create access review for Azure resources, for Entra ID, and all that kind of stuff. So here is an access review that I created earlier. And if you want to, this is in the catalog. If you want to take a look at that, then here's some of the properties of that review. And again, if you no longer need that, then you can go ahead and delete that review, which we're going to do that just to clean that up. Okay. And with that, we conclude with this module. So here you learn how to assign built-in Azure roles at the narrowest justified scope, choosing services-specific roles over the contributor, resource group scope over subscription scope, and manage identities over user accounts for workloads. So we didn't actually go over the manage identities in this case. We have touched that, and we will go back again. But um, when you are working with least privilege, and manage identities are the recommended. And again, so there's some videos where we have touched up on that, and we will cover that again. Here we went through the steps on how to create custom Azure RBAC roles. You can do that using the GUI or using JSON definitions with precise actions and data action sets depending on what you want. We also distinguish Azure roles from Microsoft Entra custom roles. So remember that, and this is really important for anything related to Azure and Entra, is to distinguish between Azure roles and Entra roles. Azure roles are related to resources, subscriptions, management group, um, resource groups, VMs, etc. Any Azure resource, that's what RBAC is about. Entra roles are related to the directory, like the global administrator, the application admin, so anything that covers the directory, the whole Entra ID that covers the accounts and groups and stuff, that's Entra. And then Azure, it's about the resources. So it's important to understand that. Here we also evaluated existing overprivileged using Defender for Cloud CSPM, CIEM recommendations, and also we use Azure Advisor. And we went through how to remediate through Microsoft Entra Access Review with automatic revocation for non-responses, for example. So in our specific case, in the scenario for Contoso, if we were working on that, the 37 owner assignments at the subscription scope are now addressed. The 12 dormant assignments were removed, 18 downgraded to the appropriate services specific roles at the resource group scope, and the 7 retained with documented access review approved. So working with that specific case over there. The access review schedule, we set it to run quarterly for whatever, we didn't follow the same scenario in the group, but normally it's something that you want to do for either guest accounts or for owner and contributor at the subscription scope. For example, you really want to monitor who's an owner at the subscription level. Defender for Cloud CSPM identified recommendations. We talked about the recommendation that is assigned to the IAM, the Identity and Access Management Team, with a 30-day governance rule deadline. Those kind of things. But anyway, so Also important to remember that least privilege for human identities in workloads is now governed with those things that we did there. And so this module turns to a different attack surface. So the next module actually will turn into a different attack surface, which is backup infrastructure, ransomware, and that kind of stuff. And that's what we're going to do next. So with that, we conclude this module, and as always, I hope that that you continue with me in this journey toward the certification exam for the SC 500. Thank you.